Welcome to the deep dive. This week, we're tackling something you sent over that really got us thinking. Brianna Wiest's The Mountain Is You.
Mm-mm.
And right from the intro in the first chapter, it just hits you with this core idea that often the biggest mountains we face, they aren't out there. They're inside us.
Exactly. It's a real shift, isn't it? We're so often looking outside ourselves for, why things are tough.
Yeah.
But this really forces you to look inward. So for this deep dive, our goal really is to unpack those first bits, the intro, chapter 1.
Right.
Really get into this idea of the internal mountain and self-sabotage. Think of it as like the fast track to understanding these key concepts.
Precisely. I
Yeah.
mean, how often do you feel like you're pushing hard but just hitting a wall?
All the time.
This material suggests maybe that wall isn't, external. Maybe it's something we're building
Mm-hmm.
unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hook, right? What feels like bad luck or outside forces
Mm-hmm.
could actually be these internal conflicts, these unmet needs playing out.
Mm.
We're hoping to spark some of those aha moments today about your own potential mountain.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so let's jump straight into chapter 1. The mountain is you.
Eh.
The main argument, as I see it, is pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest barrier in life is often, well, us.
Yep. That's the crux of it.
And this comes out of self-sabotage when we're trying to, bridge that gap between where we are and where we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
but we keep running into our own resistance.
Precisely. And what's really interesting is how Wiest reframes self-sabotage. Because, like she says, on the surface, it can look like self-hatred or maybe just a lack of willpower.
Right, we beat ourselves up over it. Why can't I just do this?
Exactly. But the deeper truth, according to the book, is that self-sabotage usually serves a purpose. It's fulfilling some kind of unconscious need.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit. So it's not just being lazy or like wanting to fail.
Yeah.
There's something we're actually getting out of it, even if we don't realize it.
That's the core idea. To really tackle self-sabotage, she talks about needing to do this deep psychological excavation.
Excavation. Sounds intense.
It is, yeah. It's like being a detective for your own mind, looking for clues and feelings, past experiences, trying to uncover those hidden needs.
So what does that involve?
Well, things like looking at unresolved trauma, unprocessed emotions, how we actually see our self-image, and then building up emotional intelligence, resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big job. The book is clear. This isn't some quick fix. It takes real work.
Right, serious internal detective work.
Mm-hmm.
And she uses that Carl Jung example, doesn't she? About how subtle this can be, even when you're a kid.
Yeah, that Jung story is fascinating. He falls, bumps his head at school, has this quick thought, oh, maybe I won't have to go back. And then, boom, he starts having these fainting spells. Couldn't control them. And Jung, being Jung, eventually figured out these spells were like his unconscious mind creating a way out of school, which he found really unpleasant. He called neuroses substitutes for legitimate suffering.
A substitute for suffering.
Yeah.
Wow, that hits hard. So the fainting was an unconscious escape route. How does that connect to, like, everyday life for us?
Well, it suggests that a lot of our own, maybe seemingly irrational fears or attachments, they might just be symptoms
Symptoms of what?
of deeper stuff we haven't dealt with, just like Jung's fainting linked back to school, maybe our anxiety about, I don't know, public speaking or commitment or whatever. Maybe it links back to a need we haven't acknowledged or figured out how to meet healthily.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The mountain really is you.
Pretty much.
So self-sabotage isn't random. It's like a messed up coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
The chapter says it happens when we refuse to consciously meet our innermost needs, often because we don't think we can handle them. Can you give some solid examples?
Absolutely. Think about someone who always seems to mess up relationships. Outwardly, it might look like fear of commitment or they pick fights, but underneath, maybe there's a deep need for self-discovery, but also a fear of real intimacy.
So they push people away.
Unconsciously, yeah. To get the space they think they need, but it ends up hurting them. Or someone who keeps undermining their own career success.
Mm-hmm.
Consciously, they want the promotion, but maybe their real passion is something creative, something they see as less stable or respectable.
Ah, right.
So they kind of sabotage the safe career to maybe subconsciously clear space for what they actually want, even if they haven't admitted it yet.
That clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how overthinking, just analyzing feelings endlessly,
Mm-hmm.
becomes a way to avoid feeling them.
Definitely. It stalls everything.
In the negative self-talk
Cool.
thing, that's
Yeah.
huge. The idea that it's a shield. If we actually believed in ourselves, we might have to take big risks, feel vulnerable.
Exactly. That inner critic keeps you safe from potential failure or rejection. It's a strange kind of protection.
But it's maladaptive, like the book says.
Totally. It gives you temporary relief, maybe numbs the desire or avoids the scary thing.
But it never fixes the root problem. It's like, yeah, putting a tiny plaster on a deep cut.
Doesn't work long term.
So then the chapter moves into irrational fear, how these old, maybe unexamined fears drive this sabotage.
Yeah, this is key. These fears, feeling not good enough, fear of failing, fear of commitment, they can become like deep attachments.
Attachments, how so?
We get used to them, almost identify with them, and sometimes the really big, scary underlying fears, they get projected onto smaller things.
Like what?
Well, maybe a deep fear of being exposed or losing control. It's too much to face directly. So we unconsciously shift that feeling onto something seemingly less threatening. We create safer things to worry about.
So the classic fear of flying example,
Oh,
it might not really be about the plane.
could be. Or the book uses the analogy of someone terrified of being a passenger in a car. The surface fear is the car ride. But the real fear might be about not having control, someone else steering their life, or even just a fear of moving forward generally.
Symbolically.
Exactly. And if you don't realize that, you just keep trying to manage the fear of cars or planes.
Without ever touching the real issue. Like mopping the floor when the roof is leaking.
Precisely. You're just dealing with the symptom endlessly.
That makes it so clear.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's the bit about unconscious negative associations. This sounds like the stories we tell ourselves, our internal narrative.
Absolutely. Wiest basically argues that self-sabotage is like a big red flag waving saying, hey, your inner story about yourself and the world, it's outdated or limiting or just plain wrong.
And our brains help keep those stories going.
Yeah, confirmation bias. Our brain loves to find evidence that proves our existing beliefs right, even the negative ones. It filters reality to fit the story.
So how do these negative associations lead to sabotaging ourselves?
Well, a really common way is we unconsciously link achieving something we want with becoming the kind of person we secretly disapprove of.
Like the money example you mentioned.
Exactly. That's a powerful one. Someone wants financial stability, consciously. But maybe they grew up believing rich people are greedy or corrupt.
Right.
So their unconscious mind fights against getting wealthy because it doesn't want them to become that bad thing. Success gets blocked not by lack of skill, but by a hidden fear of who they might become.
Wow. So the anxiety we feel around the area we sabotage, that's a clue, pointing to that limiting belief.
Often, yes. It reflects that underlying negative connection. She gives other examples too, like maybe associating being healthy with being vulnerable if you were really sick once and needed a lot of care.
Oh, interesting.
Or chasing success just for external validation, not real passion. Or even using comfort food. It might not just be about the food, but an unmet need for soothing you haven't addressed properly.
Yeah.
And even things like pessimism. It might feel like just who you are, but maybe it's a learned way to connect with people by complaining together.
Gosh, that's subtle. So the goal then is to start questioning these automatic beliefs to see how illogical they might be.
Exactly. And then consciously choose new ones. Realize, okay, not all wealthy people are bad. Being healthy is empowering. There are better ways to soothe myself or connect.
It's about challenging those automatic links.
Yes.
Breaking those old narratives.
Yes. It takes conscious effort to observe those autopilot thoughts and really examine them.
Okay, then the chapter talks about resistance to the unfamiliar. It's just basic human nature, right? We like what we know.
We really do. The unknown feels like a loss of control, even if it might be way better for us.
So self-sabotage can just be discomfort with novelty.
Sometimes, yeah. Something new comes along, maybe it's good. But it feels weird, unsettling at first. And we misread that discomfort as, oh, this is bad, and unconsciously pull back, sabotage it just to get back to what feels normal, even if normal isn't great.
And this links to that upper limit idea from Gay Hendricks.
Yeah.
And the psychological baseline.
Exactly. We seem to have this thermostat setting for how much happiness or success we're comfortable with the upper limit.
Right.
And we also tend to drift back to our usual level of well-being, our baseline, even if we consciously want more.
So if things get too good.
If things get better than our upper limit or push us too far from our baseline, we might unconsciously do something to mess it up, just to get back to that familiar, comfortable, even if unhappy zone.
Wow. So we're kind of programmed for the familiar, even over happiness.
It seems that way sometimes. Our conscious mind wants one thing. Our programming pulls us back to what it knows.
That's, yeah, a bit unsettling, which leads right into the power of our belief systems shaping our reality.
Absolutely. What you fundamentally believe, that tends to become your experience. That's why it's so vital to become aware of these old limiting stories we tell ourselves.
And they can be about anything.
Anything. Career goals, who you think you are. Oh, I'm just an anxious person.
Yeah.
The kind of news you consume. Even things like your personal style or whether you think you can travel.
And sometimes these beliefs come from wanting to feel safe.
Yeah.
Right? Like choosing comfort over growth.
Definitely. Choosing apathy because excitement feels too risky, maybe it could lead to disappointment. Or believing that good luck always has to be balanced by bad luck.
That's a common one.
Yeah. So healing really requires consciously shifting to beliefs that actually serve your growth and well-being, challenging those things, keeping you stuck.
Which brings us to that really direct section, how to get out of denial. This feels like the absolute starting point.
It really is fundamental. Wiest basically says, look, if you want real change, you have to stop kidding yourself about where you are right now. Radical honesty.
Mm.
You need to be willing to admit, okay, I feel like I could be doing more, or this doesn't feel authentic, or I'm not actually happy.
And just repeating affirmations won't cut it if you don't believe them.
Exactly. She points out that can just be a way to paper over the cracks, avoid facing the uncomfortable truth. It leads to feeling disconnected, stuck.
So instead of forcing positivity, we need the courage to actually face the unhappiness.
Precisely. Denial often looks like blaming other people or circumstances, finding reasons outside ourselves.
Yeah, rationalizing.
Right. And that stops us taking responsibility, which blocks any real change. The first step to healing, she says, is full accountability. Brutal honesty about your inner world, no matter what it looks like outside. How you feel inside is the real measure.
And admitting you're unhappy.
Yeah.
She reframes that as an act of self-love.
The greatest act of self-love, she calls it, because it finally lets you see the actual problem clearly.
Okay.
And the first practical step she suggests is super simple but powerful. Pen and paper. List everything you're unhappy with. Get specific.
Like debts, things you don't like about yourself, anxiety triggers.
Exactly. Just getting it out there brings clarity. And once it's clear, you have a choice, accept it or commit to changing it. Lingering in that unhappy but doing nothing zone is the real obstacle.
And the chapter wraps up with the path begins right where you are now. That feels quite hopeful.
It is. It's validating. It's okay if you feel miles away from your goals or you don't even know the path. It's okay if you feel like you're at rock bottom.
And rock bottom isn't the end.
No, she sees it as a potentially powerful start. Not because of some magic insight or someone rescuing you, but because that's often where you hit that point of, I never want to feel this way again, that deep personal resolution.
Ah, that never again moment. She calls that a declaration, right?
Okay.
A foundation for real self-awareness,
Yeah.
for radical change.
Yes. And at that point, blame doesn't matter anymore. The focus shifts entirely inward to your own work, your own transformation.
So rock bottom isn't just a bad day.
No, it's usually the result of habits, patterns, coping mechanisms piling up until you're forced to see yourself as the common factor.
Right.
You finally see you need to heal, to change, to commit to not repeating it. It's different from just a temporary rough patch where things are uncomfortable, but you haven't really faced the core internal issue.
She quotes Ayodeji Alusika, too, about being fed up being a motivator.
Yeah, the purest form of being fed up, that can be a huge catalyst.
And it touches on that comfort zone thing again. We stick with the familiar, even if it's bad, until staying the same becomes more painful than changing.
Exactly. That's often the tipping point. And she suggests using any anger or frustration. Channel it inward. Not self-blame, but motivation. A commitment. I am not continuing like this.
Okay, in the final part of the chapter, preparing for radical change. This addresses a big fear, doesn't it? The fear that healing will change everything.
It does. It tackles it head on. Wiest is very clear. Ending self-sabotage means change. Your new life will require letting go of the old one.
And she lists things you might lose.
Yeah, she doesn't sugarcoat it. Your comfort zone, maybe your old sense of direction, some relationships might shift or end. Maybe you won't be liked or understood by everyone anymore.
That sounds scary.
It can be, but she reframes it positively too. The people meant to be there will meet you on the other side. You'll build a new comfort zone, one based on growth. You'll find deeper love, feel truly seen, instead of just needing approval.
So the alternative is worse.
Exactly. She basically says clinging to that old sabotaging self. That's the ultimate self-sabotage. Letting go is essential to embrace real change. You have to release who you were to become who you need to be.
Wow. Okay, so summing up this first chapter, the big takeaways are self-sabotage isn't random. It's rooted in unconscious needs, fears, negative associations, discomfort with the new, limiting beliefs.
All those internal factors.
And the first steps out are crucial. Acknowledging the truth, getting out of denial, really assessing your unhappiness, and then embracing the idea that change is possible, even necessary.
Yeah, understanding that the biggest mountain is usually the one inside.
It lays such a critical foundation, doesn't it? Understanding the why behind these patterns.
Absolutely. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about understanding the roots, the drivers of these habits.
Well, you've definitely given us, and hopefully everyone listening, a lot to chew on from just this first part.
It's incredibly rich material. Really insightful.
So, for you listening, maybe take a moment after this. Think about which specific mountain we talked about really resonates with you right now. What's one small, maybe slightly scary, first step you could take, even today, just to understand its base a little better?
Could be as simple as getting out that pen and paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just starting that on a
Great.
slick. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.